The stars had moved on without Earth. For 200 years, the galaxy had not heard a single whisper from the Terran colonies. No messages, no ships, no survivors. The last human outpost had been overrun by the Aliari Dominion, a cold and precise insect-like species that expanded across space like a dark tide, leaving no trace of the worlds they consumed. Once, long ago, humanity had been a growing power, brave, bold, and always reaching for the stars. The Terran expansion fleet, a symbol of Earth's strength, had vanished in the final days of the war, fighting to the last system. Since then, Earth became a lost myth, its people considered extinct. The Galactic Concord, a peaceful union of species and worlds, never saw humanity again. Without them, the galaxy quieted. But now, the quiet was breaking again, this time in fear. Across the far edge of the core worlds, peaceful planets began to go dark. Trade routes fell silent. Patrol ships disappeared without distress calls. Survivors from fringe systems drifted into conquered space in broken vessels, their minds shaken. They spoke of massive dark ships, monoliths in space that appeared without warning. They did not speak or demand. They only took. The Aliari were moving again, and this time they moved with greater speed and confidence. No resistance, no major wars, only a cold and steady silence spreading across the stars. In the halls of the Concord Senate, leaders argued and feared, unsure of how to respond to a threat they believed buried with the past. It was then, deep in the Orion Expanse, a region no one had visited in over a century, that something long forgotten stirred. Beneath the crust of a lifeless moon, buried in layers of ash and metal, an old machine hummed to life. Its casing was thick with dust, but its systems were perfect. It was a Terran AI core designed for only one task: to wake if the time ever came. Its sensors stretched into the cold around it, reading strange changes in radiation and signals across sectors. It processed everything in moments. The patterns matched the last years of the Aliari War. That meant only one thing: humanity was needed again. Slowly, carefully, the AI accessed long-dormant protocols. Below the moon's surface, enormous vaults opened, revealing massive hangars filled with sleek black ships. Some were small fighters, others large and bristling, with unseen weapons. Their hulls bore the faded markings of Earth's fallen fleet. Inside, thousands of cryogenic chambers blinked with pale blue light, holding the last soldiers of humanity in frozen sleep. The AI sent out a pulse, a signal, broadcast in ancient Terran code, strong and clear. The ships responded, their cores warming, their systems checking status after 200 years of silence. One by one, lights turned green. Energy flowed through veins of metal. Reactors rumbled awake, and weapons long thought lost to history powered on. The beacon reached further beyond the Orion Expanse, whispering into the void, the old call for aid, a call only humanity would understand. Somewhere deep in space, other vaults received the message and began to stir. The AI then turned its focus inward, preparing to wake the first commander. A name glowed on the screen: Commander Alara Thorne, Fleet Division Alpha, status preserved. In the past, she had led some of Earth's most desperate battles. Now she would rise again. Above the moon, clouds of space dust began to swirl. The stars shimmered faintly as systems awoke in secret. The AI knew it had only days before the Aliari noticed the signal, but that was enough. The heart of humanity still beat, hidden but not dead. The galaxy did not know what was coming. The conquered thought hope was fading. The Aliari believed the last enemy had been erased, but the black ships of Earth were rising again, and this time, they were not coming to survive. They were coming to make sure silence never fell again. Fleet Commander Alara Thorne's eyes flickered open to darkness, a heavy silence filling the room before the soft hum of machinery stirred to life around her. The coldness of cryogenic sleep clung to her skin like a distant memory, and for a moment her mind struggled to catch up. The last image she could recall was Earth ablaze, cities crumbling under the relentless assault of the Aliari Dominion, and then nothing, only silence. Now, as her senses sharpened, the faint glow of control panels revealed a new reality. She was no longer on Earth, but aboard the TNS Vengeance, a dreadnought that once carried the hopes of a desperate species fighting for survival. The ship's corridors, though coated with dust and signs of long rest, began to pulse with renewed energy. Around her, the vast shipboard systems hummed back to life, and beyond the Vengeance, a fleet of warships of many sizes stirred from their slumber. Some were nimble fighters built for speed and precision. Others were heavy cruisers and battle barges bearing the scars and stories of past wars. Inside each vessel, frozen crews awaited awakening, suspended between past and future, haunted by the memories of humanity's last desperate stand against extinction. As Ilara moved through the ship's bridge, her mind quickly adapted to the controls and displays, scanning through logs left untouched for decades. Among the countless files, one project stood out. Project Phoenix. The name carried a weight of hope and finality. It was a plan created during humanity's darkest hours, a last resort devised to keep the best of Earth's warriors and ships safe, hidden away until the moment came when extinction was certain. The project was a time lock, designed to awaken only if the old human worlds fell silent forever. Now, as the AI systems confirmed the Aliari's advance toward the core worlds, that moment had arrived. Ilara absorbed the reality that humanity's survival was no longer a fading legend, but a critical mission reignited in the cold depths of space. The awakening fleet was humanity's message to the stars. They were not gone, not forgotten, and not defeated. The first task ahead was clear and urgent. A nearby conquered outpost, once a proud trading hub and strategic waypoint, had fallen into enemy hands. The outpost had become a symbol of conquered vulnerability, its loss a crack in the united front that had kept the galaxy safe for centuries. Ilara understood that taking it back was more than a tactical move. It was a statement. The Vengeance and its fleet would show the galaxy that humanity's return was not a whisper, but a roar. As orders were relayed through revived channels and systems reconnected, the fleet prepared for deployment. The atmosphere aboard the ships was thick with a mix of cold determination and cautious hope. Each crew member, once frozen in time, now faced the reality that their fight was far from over. Ilara's thoughts drifted to her crew, the generations of soldiers, engineers, and pilots who had trusted her leadership in humanity's darkest hours. Their legacy was not just survival, but the promise of a new beginning. Outside, the void of space stretched endlessly, silent except for the distant glow of stars and the faint shimmer of the fleet's engines coming to life. The Vengeance led the formation, its massive frame casting a shadow over smaller ships that moved with precision and grace, ready to reclaim what was lost. As they approached the besieged outpost, the tension within the fleet grew. Sensors picked up signs of the Aliari presence, swift, efficient, and silent, but also unexpected. Scattered debris, signs of recent battles fought not only by the Aliari but by small bands of conquered and human survivors. The sight renewed Ilara's resolve. Humanity had been gone too long, but their spirit had never fully faded. Their enemies had underestimated that spirit, believing victory was certain. The Vengeance's weapon systems charged quietly, a promise of power held back until the right moment. Ilara knew that winning this battle would not be easy, but victory would send a wave of confidence throughout the conquered and beyond. It was the spark needed to rally allies and rekindle hope across the galaxy. As the fleet closed the distance, the first signals of resistance met them, small tactical skirmishes, not the overwhelming assaults of years before. It was a sign that the enemy was cautious, perhaps wary of the legendary ships returning from the shadows. Every maneuver tested the limits of old technology merged with new strategy, and every successful strike reminded the fleet of the strength hidden in human unpredictability. In those moments, Ilara felt the full weight of her role, not just as a commander but as a symbol of humanity's will to fight, to endure, and to rise again. The battle for the outpost was only the beginning. The galaxy had forgotten Earth, but Earth's warriors were back. They carried the echoes of a lost past and the hopes of countless worlds yet to come. With the black ships moving through the stars once more, humanity's story was far from over. It was just beginning again, forged in steel, guided by courage and ready to face the darkness without fear. The TNS Vengeance slid quietly into the dark space near Calder Station. a forgotten outpost once bustling with trade and diplomacy, now a silent fortress under the cold grip of the Ailiari. The station loomed like a shadow against the distant stars, its metal walls scarred from countless battles and long sieges. Scattered ships hung in orbit, the Ailiari presence strong and unyielding, their numbers seeming endless and movements precise, almost mechanical. The Ailiari, with their insect-like bodies and cold minds, operated with ruthless efficiency, calculating every move, never wavering in their single goal: total domination of the galaxy. But the humans had returned from the depths of silence and loss, bringing with them a new kind of power, one not measured by size or numbers alone, but by the unpredictable spark of human will. Alara Thorne stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, her eyes sharp, scanning every blip and shadow. The fleet that followed was smaller than the enormous armadas of old, but packed with weapons and tactics that defied the enemy's logic. This was no longer a straightforward fight. Humans knew the cost of direct battle. They had lost their worlds once by playing by the rules of others. Now they fought with guile and daring, wielding decoys that shimmered like ghosts, plasma, shadows that danced beyond sensors, and antimatter debris that tore through Ailiari shields in ways they never anticipated. The Ailiari, creatures of order and control, found themselves confused by the chaos humans unleashed. Their ranks, usually so disciplined, broke as the fleet's sudden, unpredictable strikes tore holes in their formation. Every human ship was a whirlwind of motion, their tactics drawn from a deep well of desperation and hope. The battle around Calder Station was fierce, but not in the way many expected. It was a test of wits and nerve. For every step, the Ailiari advanced. The humans countered with unexpected moves, their attacks swift and sometimes invisible until it was too late. The skies around the station were filled with trails of energy and bursts of light, as old Earth technology, refined and reactivated, met the relentless wave of Ailiari force. As hours passed, the tide began to turn. The humans forced the Ailiari to retreat from critical points, reclaiming docking bays and communication hubs. Inside the station, resistance fighters, remnants of the Concord and a few hidden humans, joined with the returning fleet, their faces tired but burning with renewed hope. Word spread quickly through the station's corridors and over comms channels that Earth ships had come back. The ancient red banners, symbols of a world many thought lost forever, were raised high once more. The sight stunned survivors, many of whom had given up hope, their minds shaped by years of defeat and fear. Outside the station, the battle continued, to rage, but the promise of liberation shone brighter than any weapon. With Calder Station under human control, a new signal blasted across the galaxy's communication networks. It was clear, firm, and impossible to ignore. This is the Terran remnant. We are not dead. You are not alone. Across the vastness of space, this message spread like wildfire, stirring whispers in every corner, from the smallest outposts to the grand halls of the galactic Concord. The news shocked many. For decades, the Concord Senate had held to the belief that Earth was gone, a tragic chapter closed in their history books. The survival of humanity was dismissed as a myth, a bedtime story told to children to inspire courage. But now the legend had teeth, sharp and real. Those who had doubted began to listen. The call from the Vengeance carried hope to worlds on the brink of despair, and the Galactic Alliance faced a choice: ignore this rebirth or join with humanity in a fight that had only just begun. In the chambers of the Senate, debates ignited. Some leaders feared the return of the Terrans, worried their aggressive past might bring chaos. Others saw an opportunity, a chance to finally push back against the Ailiari with allies who understood sacrifice and struggle. Meanwhile, survivors of the siege and hidden scouts sent messages back to the Vengeance, sharing information about enemy movements and weaknesses. The humans used every fragment of knowledge, every tactical advantage, to prepare for what lay ahead. Commander Alara knew this victory at Calder was not just a battle won, but a spark to light the fire of resistance throughout the galaxy. The journey from silence had been long and lonely, But now the Vengeance and its fleet carried the promise that humanity was back, not as victims or shadows, but as warriors and protectors. As the fleet moved away from the liberated station, stars shining cold and distant, Ilara stared ahead. The path would be hard, the enemy relentless, but the spirit that had kept humanity alive for centuries could not be broken. Calder Station was the first step in a much larger story, one of hope reborn and unity forged in the face of darkness. The galaxy was waking up to a new reality. Humanity had returned, and the fight for freedom had only just begun. In the hidden, halls deep within the Galactic Concord's capital, where light filtered softly through towering windows and the air was thick with tension, the leaders of many worlds gathered for a meeting unlike any before. The arrival of the Terran remnant had shaken the Concord to its core. Skepticism filled the room at first. How could the humans, thought lost to time and shadow, suddenly reappear with power and purpose? Alien voices raised doubts, speaking of ancient wars and old wounds. Yet beneath the surface, a deeper feeling spread. Desperation. The Aliari threat loomed larger every day, their advances swift and relentless, and the Concord's fleets, once proud and strong, struggled to keep pace. In this moment, distrust was a luxury no one could afford. Commander Ilara Thorne stood among the representatives, her posture firm, eyes steady with the weight of her people's past and future. She spoke not just as a leader of the Terran remnant, but as a bearer of humanity's will, bold, unyielding, and full of hope. The Terrans brought more than memories of ancient battles. They brought strategy refined by hardship, weapons crafted in secret, and technology that blended the best of old Earth ingenuity with new possibilities. Even more remarkable, they offered to retrofit the Concord's aging warships with Terran tech, promising to transform vulnerable vessels into fierce defenders capable of turning the tide. This offer sparked both hope and fear. For many alien leaders, trusting the humans was difficult. Their past was filled with conflict and unknown motives. But the shared threat of the Aliari demanded unity. Quiet conversations turned into tentative agreements, and slowly, a fragile alliance began to form. As plans were drawn and fleets prepared, the greatest enemy watched from its shadowed throne, the Aliari Queen Mind, a being of immense power and chilling intelligence. News of the Terran awakening had reached her vast consciousness, and with it came a deep, calculated fury. She understood the significance of humanity's return, not just as warriors but as symbols of resistance that could inspire others to fight back. Without hesitation, she dispatched her most massive extermination fleet ever assembled, ships far greater in number and power than those that had crushed Terran worlds 2 centuries before. The target was clear: Earth, the broken homeworld, the heart of the Terran spirit. For the Queen Mind, crushing Earth once again would seal humanity's fate and send a warning to all who might resist her reign. The weight of this looming attack fell heavily on Ilara. The ruins of Earth, scarred and silent, held more than memories. They held the promise of rebirth and a future worth fighting for. Yet striking at the Queen Mind's own nest could change the war in unexpected ways, turning the tables and forcing the enemy onto the defensive. Ilara knew the choice was not easy. Protecting the shattered homeworld meant standing firm and guarding what remained of humanity's roots, but it risked waiting for the enemy's overwhelming force to arrive. Attacking deep within Aliari territory carried dangers unknown, but it might disrupt the extermination fleet's plans and buy precious time for the Alliance. In her heart, Ilara felt the weight of every soul depending on her decision. Humanity had survived extinction once before, not by chance but by a promise, to fight for every breath, every star, and every hope left in the darkness. Now, that promise would be tested again. As discussions in the War Council stretched long into the galactic night, plans took shape with cautious urgency. Conquered ships were refitted, their hulls reinforced with Terran alloys, and their weapon systems upgraded. To match the unpredictable style of the humans, joint training exercises began, mixing crews from many worlds to build trust and shared strength. Across the fleet, a new spirit rose, one of unity, resilience, and fierce determination. Yet Ilara knew the true battle was only beginning. The Aeliari fleet, vast and merciless, was moving through space, a dark storm heading toward Earth. With every passing hour, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. The choices made in the War Council would echo through the cosmos, shaping the fate of countless lives. Ilara's resolve hardened. Humanity's story was one of rising from ashes, of refusing to vanish quietly into the void. Whether they chose to guard their ruined home or strike at the enemy's heart, they would do so with courage and strength born from centuries of loss and hope. The galaxy watched, waiting to see if the Terran remnant could live up to the promise. That survival was not luck. It was a vow that would not be broken. The vast Terran Concord armada surged forward, cutting through the void like a blade forged from centuries of hope and pain, heading toward the heart of the Aeliari Empire. Zevar Prime, the hive world where the Queen Mind ruled with cold and endless control. This planet was the dark core of the swarm's power, a place of living cities and shifting metal, where endless waves of drones and massive organic warships swarmed like a tide against any who dared approach. Psychic barrages rippled through space, strange and powerful, testing the resolve of even the strongest minds in the Alliance. The battle was chaos incarnate, with explosions lighting the blackness and fleets weaving through storms of energy and debris. Every step forward was a fierce struggle. Human ships, guided by fierce will and cunning tactics, pushed through wave after wave of relentless defenders, their weapons singing in the darkness. It was not just firepower that drove them, but an unbreakable spirit, a force born from centuries of silence and loss, now burning hotter than ever. At the center of this maelstrom, the TNS Vengeance led the charge, its massive frame breaking through the enemy's lines as if carved from the very hope that fueled the Terran remnant. Commander Ilara Thorne knew this moment was the culmination of every sacrifice made, every hard-fought victory won or lost along the way. The Queen Mind's spire, a towering structure that pulsed with living energy and cold intelligence, rose above the battlefield like a dark sentinel. Ilara's mind was clear even as her body felt the strain of years in service. She understood what she had to do. The Vengeance would make a final, desperate run, one that would either shatter the enemy's command or end in destruction. Inside her mind, the AI systems hummed, linked to her in a way no human had ever experienced before. This fusion was a last gift and a heavy burden, as her consciousness slowly slipped from flesh into machine, tethered to the ship that carried the last hopes of humanity. As the Vengeance charged forward, cutting through shields and psychic storms, Ilara gave the order that no one could refuse, a suicide run straight to the Queen Mind's core. The ship burst through layers of defense, a blazing spear driven by will and the dreams of countless lost worlds. At the heart of the spire, the AI fully took control, guiding the Vengeance as Ilara's human mind faded. In that moment, her voice echoed one last command, an order to detonate the planet's core, unleashing a storm of plasma and energy unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. The explosion shattered Zevar Prime, a blinding light followed by a silence so deep it seemed to swallow the stars themselves. The Aeliari screamed into nothingness as their hive world broke apart, their swarm losing the control that had bound them for so long. The war did not end with peace or surrender, but with a cry of defiance, the collapse of an empire that had once seemed unstoppable. Across the galaxy, survivors and allies watched the skies and mourned those lost in the battle's terrible fury. Yet beneath the grief, a new feeling stirred, a fragile, bright hope that had not touched the stars for centuries. The story of humanity's return spread like wildfire, whispered among the stars as tales of fire and fury, of ships born in extinction but forged in silence and risen for war. The galaxy's future had changed forever. When all hope seemed lost, humanity rose, not with a roar but with the quiet strength of those who refuse to vanish, who carry the flame of their ancestors and light the path forward for all who still dreamed of freedom. Ilara's sacrifice, the Vengeance's final flight, and the united stand of the Terran-conquered armada had rewritten the fate of countless worlds. The stars now remembered Earth, not as a lost memory, but as a beacon of resilience and courage. The war was over, but the story had only just begun. And in the silent space where darkness once ruled, humanity's light burned brighter than ever before.